Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. I hope everyone is doing okay this evening. Let me check my volume. My wife and I are making plans for our trip, but she's going down to check on my mama, and I wanted to get this one in while she's doing that thing. Good. So I was turned on to this particular piece by Balthazar. So good looking out, Balthazar. This is awesome. Expansive. Government done right. I love it. I love it. So Democrat Don Beyer. Usually when I'm talking about Democrats, I'm talking about them in scathing terms. But in this case, this is somebody actually doing something right. I think his analysis may be wrong, but what he's doing is right, and I support it. I love it. It's one of those things where government can do big things, and government in doing those things sometimes can do those things right. The problem with this isn't going anywhere. So this is HR, what's the number? HR 3057, Fair Representation Act. Now the reason you've never heard of this is because even though Don Beyer put it forward, and Ro Khanna, essentially them two, put this bill forward, the goal being to completely transform a voting system. Our elections. The goal being to restore faith back into the American elections. Now, the interesting point to this is it's not like a BS change. It's a substantial change, or at the very least it would be a substantial change. Even if you go about your way, and let's say the voting systems in this country were perfect, and let's also assume that you had 100% confidence in the electoral system, in the way the voting systems were run, you will still get screwy results. Now, the reason you'll still get screwy results is because just because your elections are run perfectly doesn't necessarily mean that the districts weren't gerrymandered, massive amounts of cash weren't being put into the system, or you had a large swath of people who weren't necessarily being represented, meaning from the standpoint of choice. I'm making the point to you that just because the voting itself may be right, meaning just because somebody does something and they fix voting or put clarity in voting, let's say paper ballots, it doesn't do anything to the fact that the system itself has been somewhat contorted. It's like light. Yeah, that's one. It's like light going through space. It's like light always goes in a straight line. So let's pretend for the moment that the voting system is perfect. Light always goes in a straight line. That doesn't really have anything to do with it going around, let's say, a black hole, or going around some object that contorts space-time, meaning light itself gets bent. Technically, yes, it's going in a straight line, but from the standpoint of a larger context, it's being bent around something. I'm making a point here is the same thing. Just because the election itself may be perfect, even if you think the election is perfect, doesn't have anything to do with the gaming that's done with the system itself to give you screwy results. The Fair Representation Act is trying to do something about that by expanding the amount of representatives that people have in certain states and bringing in ranked choice voting. The weird part about it is the argument that they're making is they believe ranked choice voting would give them more centrist candidates. Now, the reason they think this is because they believe that the districts are so gerrymandered that because of the gerrymandering, oh, and by the way, gerrymandering, thing of the past, that the districts are being drawn by an independent body. That's one of the other big things. Essentially, taking out gerrymandering from the political toolbox. I gotta be honest, I don't know why that was allowed in the first place. A party has a vested interest in doing what's best for the party and will do what's in the best interest for the party. If you give them a tool and say, hey, draw a district, why on earth wouldn't that party draw that district that's going to be at the best interest of the party? Now, some people will say, but they're doing it for the country. They're trying to make it fair because, they're trying to represent people. I would call that person naive as all fuck. That's what I would say. They are naive as all fuck. They're contorting those districts, drawing those districts in the best interest of the people of their party. Of course they're going to do it, because it's in their best interest to do so. Thing of the past under the bill. So a political system in order to draw the districts, expanding the number of representatives. You're not expanding the number, but you're expanding the number of representatives that are in sundry districts from 3 to 5, meaning there are some that are going to be more representation that they would get currently. And ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting. Now, their reasoning for the ranked choice voting thing is interesting to me because I think they're wrong. Now, their argument is this will give you more centrist candidates. Now, it will give you more representation. I agree with that. More centrist candidates. Maybe, maybe not. It depends on who's running in the race. So the thought is, because the districts were so gerrymandered, they ended up with a situation where the person couldn't lose. So they would play to the worst of their base, because going to the base in the primaries is where you're going to win. And if you won the primaries, more likely than not, you would win the election. So the real contest was in the primaries, meaning the people in those districts will run to the edges as hard and as fast as possible, because that's what you needed to do to win the red meat Republican primaries. So the thought is, ranked choice voting somehow, I don't know how, will end up with more centrist candidates because people would have more choice in who they were voting for. Yes and no. Yes and no. If you're talking purely from the standpoint of a Democratic primary, maybe. But not if you're talking about the standpoint of a general election, which is why I support this. If I understand this correctly, they're saying that ranked choice voting is going to be the tool that they're going to use to choose their elections, which I am for that. Let me pose another scenario. You're running for an election, let's say Virginia. Don Beyer is in Virginia. Let's say some establishment hack Democrat is running. And let's say some insane Republican, like batshit crazy Republican, knuckle dragging, hair on forehead, grunts when talks Republican is walking and in the race. Say that guy. Now say I'm in a position where I need to vote, and this Republican is talking about banning birth control, absolute just birth control, because the birth control itself offends God, and he doesn't want to offend God, and so he doesn't want birth control to be in this situation. And he says science backs him up. Science doesn't back him up. He just lies flagrantly about it. Let's say he says we don't have to worry about climate change because God is going to handle that. And the Bible says that that's not something that we need to concern ourselves with. I can go on. I'm just saying, let's just say the guy who's running for office is batshit crazy. And before you say, well, dude, there's no way. We had a guy who was close to that in the last go around for governor. What am I to do? What is somebody like me with my political dimensions or my political situation? What am I to do? Now, the person's not a Democrat, but they see one guy and they're terrified. They're like, oh my God, he is the doom bringer. And they see the other Democrat and they're like, God, they got me over a goddamn barrel. I don't want to put this guy in office because I don't want to reward them for just breathing air. If you're in the normal election system, you have to do one or two things. Accept the fact that that Republican may win without that vote. Or accept the fact that you've just put in some hack Democrat and you've been fell into the scam to which Democrats are able to get into office without necessarily giving anything to the process. In a ranked choice voting scenario, you don't have to do that at all. You can say, I'm not voting for either of these two. And let me explain why in the other situation. In that situation, if there was a Green Party member, if there was somebody else in one of the other parties, you will say to yourself, I would prefer that guy, that Green Party member, or that workers, whatever, that socialist. What he's saying, I can vibe with. But I don't believe that the rest of the city or the rest of the state will go for it. And because I don't believe the rest of the city or the state will go for it, I'm going to vote for this hack. It's an esoteric governor. It's that thing that sits on your shoulder that tries to give you this conception of what you think the world is. And in your estimation of the world, that socialist or that person never wins. Now, with ranked choice voting, that's not really true anymore. It doesn't matter. I mean, ultimately, you have your first choice, which is that socialist or that Green Party member who you don't believe would ever win. And you have that hack Democrat. Your conscience is secure. Now, what you may find is that that Green Party member gets a hell of a lot more votes than you thought she'd get, because there were a lot more people like you who wanted that person to win that just never had the balls to vote for him because you were so terrified of the guy who barely breathes air winning that race. Regardless of whether I think his estimation is wrong on this point, I don't care. I like it. I like it. Let's go through the article real quick. I want to make sure I haven't missed anything. This is... Beyer introduces Fair Representation Act to reform congressional elections. The Fair Representation Act is designed to restore the faith in which so many Americans have lost in our political system, says Representative Don Beyer. This bill will ensure that every voter has their voice represented in Congress and makes real progress towards bipartisan focus on getting results in American people. Representative Beyer was joined with Representative Rokana, good job Rokana, and Jamie Raskin, good job Jamie Raskin, co-leads on the bill, as well as speakers from Fair Vote and Third Way. Third Way, oh God. The Fair Representation Act, which is a comprehensive approach to improving congressional elections in American history, said Robin Ritchie, the executive director for Fair Vote, the creators of an impartial national standard that gets to the core of Fair Vote's mission, giving voters greater choice, stronger voice, and a representative democracy that works for all Americans. I gotta be honest, I don't care who's backing this, I like this. But for the very reasons I just told. Fair Representation Act will move U.S. House elections into multi-member districts drawn by independent redistricting commissions in the election elected through ranked choice voting. The multi-member districts will be effective in state-appointed 6 or more seats in the House and would elect 3 to 5 representatives each, depending on the size of the state. Sorry, this lettering is really small. This light is killing my eyes. Taken together, these 3 measures would incentivize congressional candidates to appeal to a broader range of voters. No single reform will create more opportunities for women and people of color across the spectrum to compete in fair elections, said Cynthia Terrell, founder of the Representation 2020. It is central to our vision on how we achieve parity for women in congressional elections. Look, I just want to be represented. This is not, to me, about identity. This is about fucking fair elections. Yeah, give people a better opportunity to vote. So, right here. This article's in the bottom. We'll go further into it. Change House elections from winner-take-all to ranked choice voting. Currently, voters can only choose one candidate, and one candidate wins each seat. Under the new system, voters would rank all the candidates in order, and given their point value, the candidate with the highest points win. Mandate each ranked choice voting is a little bit more than that. It's a little more to it than that. Like, ultimately, it's you choose your person. So say, for instance, Jill Stein, Clinton, Trump, and some libertarians in the race. You can choose Jill Stein and then Hillary Clinton. Well, if Jill Stein doesn't win it, the votes at that point roll over to Hillary Clinton, in which case your second choice gets the highest, gets included in the count. It's almost like 2 tiers of voting. Who's your first vote and who's your second vote? I'm explaining this extremely poorly. From the standpoint of the person, though, it just means you get 2 choices. You rank your choice. I want this person to win most. If that person doesn't win, I want this person to win. Your vote doesn't count against you in the same way your vote may count against you now. I don't want that knuckle dragger, so I'm going to pick this person. Well, you've just picked somebody you didn't want because you were terrified that the knuckle dragger was going to win the race. In ranked choice voting, you choose the person who you actually want. And then you make your secondary choice. Just in case Jill Stein doesn't win, I want my vote to roll over to Hillary Clinton. That's what it boils down to. mandate that each state with 6 or more House members create multi-member congressional districts. All districts would elect between 3 to 5 members. The total size of Congress would be the same, but the individual districts would be geographically bigger and in most cases more demographically diverse. Requires states to redistrict by independent commissions, not through partisan legislatures. That's big, and that should be common sense. And I don't quite understand why it's not common sense. I think this gets to this idea of what people used to think of government versus what they think of government now. And I think that's a significant change that's taken place. And I don't know if that's a thing that's taken place in my lifetime, or if it was always in place, or if it was as bad as it is now. I suspect that that probably wasn't in place before because they didn't need it to be in place before. There was this gentleman understanding of government that, look, we won't go beyond certain bounds. So we will redistrict in the way we're supposed to redistrict. And the partisanship ends at the door in that sense. Not anymore. Not anymore. I don't know how they used to do it, if there was this kind of gentleman's way of going about it. But not anymore. That's done, son. And I don't quite understand why the other Democrats aren't on board for this. Like, screaming it from the rooftops. Now, I do understand from the standpoint, if they look at this in the same way that I look at this and say this would allow third parties a much better option of gaining traction in the electorate. I can understand from that perspective. But if your goal is just a fair representation, sign in, stranger. Sign in, stranger. I like this. I like it. Wesley Walker. It may be healthy for Jamal to do so, Rob. Then again, it might break him. Uh-oh. What did Rob say? Let's see if Jamal says it's from his chest like he did last week in another Russian video he did about asking for him to believe this when we've been overthrowing governments. Wait, what do you mean? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Bernie did a solo speech. I got to check it out. I just have to prepare myself because I can't stomach that shit. I've been waiting to see if Jamal sees the light in regards to Bernie. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oh, God. Scott Sanders. Bernie's solo speech in Congress on Russia a few days ago was even worse than the Rand Paul debate. Oh, God. Oh, God. I'm going to have to do that video. I'm going to have to do that video. Under the scam of 2016, we all be ash and bone in a post-apocalyptic hellscape as President Hillary cackles with glee. You know, it's funny. Yeah, I think she would have started a war. I think she would have started a war. It's like, for however bad Trump is, look, between the two, one wanted to be conciliatory with Russia, and they mock and shame him for it after the election, and the other one wanted to put a missile defense shield in Syria, which was going to put her in direct opposition to Russia, who was also already having operations in Syria. It's like, are you going to shoot down a Russian jet? Yes or no? That's a war. That's called a war. That's called a war. So yeah, between those two people, I am more inclined to believe that Clinton was going to start a war. Now, from the standpoint of Trump, he's been at least trying to be conciliatory. The Democratic Party has just attacked him relentlessly, pushing him to the right. Now, beyond him being relentless, the issue with Trump here is not Russia. The issue with Trump here is Iran, because Trump seems like he wants to start another war with Iran. Joe, I would agree with you if you're talking about him being boisterous with regards to Iran. I would not agree with you if you're talking about him being more likely to start a war with Russia. So, just saying. The Trump-Cohen audio just released, paying the Playboy model was just released. This is not good news for Donald Trump. He clearly knew about this deal. Yeah, of course he knew about the deal. I don't believe he didn't know about that deal. I don't know why he lies about this stuff. I gotta be honest. You had sex with a Playboy model. Great. Great. You wanted to pay her off to shut up. Great. You're Donald Trump. Do you honestly believe that people don't already believe those things? Come on. This could be the next HR litmus test after Medicare for All support HR 3057 or lose. Balthazar, I love this bill. I love this bill. I read through this and I was like, God, this is such common sense. Like it's breathtakingly common sense. It's one of those things where you read, it's like, should people have the food that they need to eat in order to live? Yes, yeah, they should. And in an electoral system, should we make sure that people have representation? Yes. Should we allow partisan hacks to draw district lines in ways that represent partisan hacks? No. But they do it. They do that. Completely do that. Should we penalize people for voting for the person who they actually want to vote for? No, we shouldn't. And yet we do. I love this bill. Why don't you hope the Republicans are wiped out? I do hope Republicans are wiped out. I hope both are wiped out. I hope Republicans and conservative Democrats are wiped out. I want them off the political space. I sent you a super chat, Jamal. Did you? Did I miss it? Rand Bernie vid. Uh-oh. Want to see you real on Bernie for Russian BS. Oh, God. No, God. Yeah, I'm going to do the Rand Paul in Russia. I saw him do it. It killed me. It killed me. Because, you know, the sad part is, Rand Paul says things sometimes where I'm like, yes, great. Now, granted, once you get to the economics, that stuff falls off of a cliff. But when he's talking about, maybe we shouldn't lock this many people up and put them in prison. I mean, after all, we're taking human beings and we're pulling them out of a particular society and we're putting them in a cage. Maybe we shouldn't do that. Maybe that's not a good thing. Now, to me, that sounds like common sense. To the political people in the Democratic and Republican Party, not so much. Hey, maybe we should allow people to burn and smoke plants if they want to burn and smoke plants. I mean, after all, you're allowing them to drink alcohol and you allow them to smoke tobacco and you're allowing them to eat burgers from McDonald's which has that pink slime shit in it. Hey, so maybe you should allow them to smoke plants if they want to smoke plants. Not so much. We're going to put people in a cage for doing that. We're going to ruin their lives for doing that. This makes no sense. I love it when Rand Paul is talking like that because to me he's talking good goddamn sense. Then he opens his mouth about economics and it's like off a cliff. It is a weird inversion. It's a weird inversion to see Bernie Sanders fighting Rand Paul on some stupid, ridiculous Russian nonsense. Mind you, Russian nonsense that's going to be used to hit him. When they run again, and the argument is made that status quo failed, there's going to be someone with a brass pair of testicles in a suit that's probably a little too tight for him, with shiny teeth and really slick hair, saying, look, it wasn't status quo that failed. It was Russian meddling. We know that there was Russian hacking. You yourself said it, Bernie Sanders. You yourself said it was Russian hacking. I mean, after all, those Russians were trying to get you elected, right, Bernie Sanders? I mean, didn't they invade your Facebook group, right? I mean, that's what you said. You were a tool of Vladimir Putin, right? I'm waiting for them to say that on the debate stage with Bernie Sanders when he gets on the debate stage. Them telling him that, according to Bernie Sanders, Russians tried to get Bernie Sanders elected. Can you imagine that shit? Bernie Sanders repudiating Bernie Sanders. I'm waiting for that. They're going to have a campaign hit video with Bernie Sanders standing there talking about the Russians were trying to help him get elected. It's going to be insane. Trump committed pay for Playboy. Pay for Playboy. That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Charles Pierre, if they would let the Bernie wing take over, it would be a Corbyn-like situation. Now, yes, where a new reinvigorated party would conquer. Yes, agreed. Newsflash, Democratic Party is the progressive party in the country. It's not progressive. That's kind of the problem. It's a party that's left of the Republican Party. That's true. That's true. In the same way that, you know, the 2-yard line is left of the 1-yard line. It's somewhat relative from the perspective standpoint. But for all intents and purposes, the Democratic Party is the Tory party in the UK. They're a conservative party. You're talking about, I think, a relative distance between the two things. It doesn't necessarily make it a progressive party. There's a difference in those things. Balthazar, let's see who's under that mask. Hillary Clinton! I would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for you meddling Russians and your mangy robot trolls. Your mangy robot trolls. Jamal's face when calling Democrats progressives. Earthware wolf. Yeah, I'd chafe at that, man. I'd chafe at that. Democrats progressive, my ass. Jamal, you should really cover the latest big story in France. It's a crispy one and it's taking big proportions. No. What's the story? I don't know what the story is. I'll check it out. Story in France. I know that there's a wildfire in Greece. I know about Brexit in the UK. I know that there's something going on with the EU from the standpoint of refugees, that they're trying to stem the tide in regards to the confusion. I know Angela Merkel nearly lost her prime ministership after God knows how many years of dominance. But France, I don't know what's going on in France. I think they were, if I'm not mistaken, they were calling for a vote of no confidence in Macron, but I thought that was the opposition was calling for it. Sometimes opposition can call for all sorts of shit. I need to check it, see what's going on. Don't forget to watch the Russian Moscow show tonight. And the United States is not a European country, nor will it ever be one, so stop trying to compare our liberal party to the liberal parties around the world. The comparison is apples to oranges. No, it's not. It's not. It's not at all. The United States used to have an actual progressive party. That party was co-opted and taken over by the Republican Party for all intents and purposes. So the same people who give money to the Republican Party. Essentially, the 1% bought the Democratic Party. Now, you can look up and you can look around and say, hey, I like what we got so far for a Democratic Party. But the problem is, newsflash, the other people don't like it. Now, those other people who I talk to and who I'm trying to entice and get to the point where they can actually stand up for themselves, dust themselves off like grown men and grown women, and walk and say, if that's what you want for a party, fine. Keep your shitty party and lose, perpetually lose, because that's effectively what you've been doing, losing. Your party, the party who you're calling your quote-unquote liberal party, has lost remarkably trying to imitate Republicans. So, newsflash, the public itself is giving you a downvote. It doesn't like you or your party. And for all intents and purposes, you have been losing, going with this idea that this is a liberal party, the liberal elite. We have a thing on our lapel. That's called failure. And the fact that the lefties, the argument for the left has been subsuming this idea of this argument for the moderate gets across the level of your failure. So, yeah, your clique, your ragtag bunch, was able to essentially kick out the New Dealers and contort the Democratic Party into some kind of mutated, corrupted version of what a lefty party was supposed to be. In the same way that that third way group of thugs was able to corrupt what was a decent Democratic Party, it can change back. What I would say is that from the standpoint of the people on the left, that party should get zero support from you. Zero. As long as it's willing to toe this particular line. Till that party changes, it should not get any of your support. I will say support the people who represent your interests. That hasn't changed. If Tulsi Gabbard ran, Tulsi Gabbard would get my vote in a heartbeat. So, yeah, there's that. Jamal, Joe is simply telling you that you have nowhere else to go. Shut up and fall in line. Literally! Like, I keep telling you, this is how they think. You have nowhere else to go. That's how they think. The model continues to perpetuate itself as long as you listen to that. You have nowhere else to go and say, you're right. We have nowhere else to go. You do have somewhere else to go. You have somewhere else to go in the sense of not voting for the person who is not representing your interests. You have nowhere else to go. I love that. That's amazing. You support people who represent your interests. And the people that don't, let them fail. Let them build their support by people who they believe represent their interests. Meaning, you support people who you want to win, not the people who you don't. Make the people who you don't believe represent your interests come and get your vote. And not in a bullshit way. They get it when you realize and when you believe they represent your interests. Until then, let them fail. Let them fail. You've been sold a bill of goods with this you have nowhere else to go stuff. This power distribution from this idea of the moment that they realize, hey, this game theory, it's only two parties. Those guys are batshit crazy. So we can move far to the right as long as we're just a little bit less worse than the knuckle draggers. And if we can prove that we breathe air, we can get those votes. Why are you just satisfied with somebody who breathes air? Don't you want somebody who actually represents you? And this is the argument that I make. It's not enough of an incrementalist. You should actually want to get stuff done. The last two presidents won on messages of hope and change and make America great again. I have no idea what either one of those things mean. I would say neither did the public, but they understood the themes of change. The incrementalist is not the person who's going to get you to where you need to go. Big, bold ideas of change. And look, I would make the point that says this is one of them. I love this idea. I love the idea. Balthazar, Scooby-Doo means commerce. Peter Dobby don't. Peter Dow has apparently seen the light, has been reformed. Have you seen that? Have you seen that recently? Peter Dow has been reformed. Bernie's problem is that his YouTube channel isn't big enough. That's what it is. That's totally what it is. Wait for your YouTube star to get elected. All right, this one, I didn't mean this one to go this long. Yeah, I didn't mean this one to go this long. Balthazar, good looking out for turning me on to this. I love this. I sent Don Beyer an invite to the show. I am caustic towards Democrats, so he's probably not going to take me up on that invite. I would love for him, however, to take me up on the invite. I would love him to talk about this, the particulars of this, what he wants to accomplish with this, all that stuff. So I sent him an invite a few minutes ago. Hopefully he will send me something back. I had to lie in order to send it, so I feel slightly bad about it. His website has this thing where you had to fill out where you are. And if you're not in his district, he doesn't accept it. So I put in his house address and sent my message, because his house address would be accepted. I don't know where the other people are. So hopefully he takes me up on that, and hopefully he says, yes, I'd be happy to come on your show. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. All right, I'm going to end this here. Oh, yeah, Jimmy Dore was on RT. Yeah, he was nervous, but he did good. I thought he did good. Big, bold ideas don't get approved unless you have 60% or more approval in Senate. That's true. That's true, Joe. I agree. I agree. Like, I'm not blind to the difficulties of it. I guess my thing is, part of the president's strength is a bully pulpit. Now, part of that is, yes, I would prefer to have... See, it's weird. See, it's not one or the other. It's almost like during... Say you had President Bernie Sanders in office during Occupy Wall Street. What would Sanders have done? Like what would a Bernie Sanders have done with the Occupy Wall Street raging through the streets? He would probably step up attacks on Wall Street. He would say, see, look at what's out there. There's a ruckus in the society. Something needs to be done. I'm not going to stand here, and etc. He'd be like a caged animal, a socialist, foaming at the mouth, ripping his shirt off as he comes out the White House. Like, I'm trying to get across this idea of opportunity. And something like an Occupy Wall Street was a magnificent opportunity This is what I mean when I say there is no left party in this country. You're talking about Democrats are a leftist party. They attacked Occupy Wall Street. If you are a leftist, chaos is your friend. You dwell in chaos. You love it when there's a certain amount of chaos. So at the very least, revolutionary chaos. What takes place if Obama, so articulate, so over-the-top articulate, comes out and says, these people are in a difficult situation, and we need to do something about this. We can't stand by. We need to do something about this particular situation. Look at the number of the poverty in this country. Look at the number of people who are homeless. Look at, make it a national emergency using the Occupy Wall Street as a catalyst for that national emergency. The media is looking at these guys every day, their encampments and everything else. And you have this thing in the public consciousness of, at least in their heads, that this thing is sweeping across the country. Is it real? Who the fuck knows? It doesn't matter if it's real. It's on the media. It's everywhere. It's ever present because that's what the media is covering, because the president is an uncaged animal at this point, screaming at the top of his lungs about poverty and amelioration of the middle and working class in this country, as opposed to using the police forces to crack down and get them out the way. It's the difference in those things. Being on the left would have been handled differently. Obama himself has called himself a Republican. He said, I would have been a Republican a few years ago. He's right. He's right. I'm losing trust in Bourne, and that is painful to say. I don't know who Bourne is. So let me check that video with Sanders and Rand Paul. I watched a section of it. I don't know how long the video is, but we can watch it together. You can see my pain in person. And yeah, I couldn't watch his speech. I couldn't watch it. I saw it on my YouTube thing, you know, as you're looking through your YouTube list. And I slumped in my chair. And I was like, oh God, I can't. I'm not man enough to watch that. I can't take it. I can't take it. I can't take it. It's too much. It's too much to bear. Yeah, it's too much to bear. God, I hate him talking about that Russia shit. Like, I get why he's doing it, but fucking hell. Like, whether he believes it or not, it hurts. See me. If I'm a Democrat and I'm running in the election coming up, I would grab the video of Bernie Sanders sweating bullets, talking about Russia invading his Facebook groups, and talking about what he was doing, and I would ask, was Bernie Sanders really doing something to help? And then I would show the guy that impugns what Bernie Sanders was saying, because the guy was like, Bernie Sanders never asked me to do this. And I would hit on that idea that Vladimir Putin wanted Bernie Sanders in that race, and I would show video of Bernie Sanders talking about how Russia was trying to get into events and everything else, making this association between Sanders and Russia that Sanders himself has assiduously made. He is building his own gravestone. He's building his own gravestone. He needs to get out of the primaries. And part of getting out of the primaries is a bunch of Hillary voters who dwell in the shadow like pack animals, waiting for the moment to essentially attack. Meaning, I'm making the point that there's no point in giving them ammunition for this stuff. Why are you in the middle of Senate beating the shit out of Trump in Russia when that's going to be used to attack you and attack the left? And it's going to make the argument that Hillary Clinton didn't lose on her own merit. She lost because of Russia, which is the last thing you should want the public to get across. Part of the strength of Hillary Clinton losing on her own merits was that she lost on her own merits. There was nothing else attributable to that woman's losing. It shouldn't help her argument. It's a bullshit argument. So, Jay Scott, this bill won't make it out of the House. Unfortunately, Jay, I think you're right. I think you're right. In fact, it says it up top in the bill thing itself. At the bottom, it says, this bill has no hope of passage. The wild part about it is, I suspect the bill has no hope of passage for the same reason that I express. The ranked choice voting thing it breaks the paradigm of I'm stuck voting for the Democrat. It just breaks it. You're not stuck voting for the Democrat at that point. You can vote for the person who you like the most. So the Democratic strategy in this case is being least worse. Well, if your strategy is least worse, why would you add a system that would allow them to vote for somebody who's not least worse? It's just better without penalty. So yeah, Jay, you're probably right. That said, just because you're right doesn't necessarily mean I don't want to give credit where credit's due. And this bill is awesome. And this bill should be somewhat of a litmus test. I agree with you, Balthazar. I agree with you. All right, I'm going to end this here. Like I said, I was going to end it like 20 minutes ago. Thank you all for joining. Let me make sure I didn't miss anyone. Scooby-Doo means commence. Peter Dowby don't. Yeah, and don't trust Peter Dow. Don't fall into that garbage. Peter Dow is trying to do a political stunt of being, oh, we're fighting with the Bernie supporters. I don't know why we're fighting with the Bernie supporters. I need to make love, not war, and I need to get these guys on my side because this conflict is not helping our cause. Yeah, you're right. The conflict is not helping your cause. I'm not a part of your cause. Hopefully people are not stupid enough to fall for the shit of being a part of your cause. Yes, I'm hostile to that. I'm hostile. I'm a caged animal. All right. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the Patreon. Have a good one, guys. Good night. I think it's good night.